A History of Creation, Part 2. October 9, 2013. So let us delve further into this mysterious world behind the veil, for we gather you are starting to get more than a little curious about some of those tantalizing details. The last time, we showed you that the essence of it all is in creating, or the energy that has been given the task of creating it all, from big and small, tangible and less so. This in itself can be very difficult to fathom, but let us again try to give you another view, and perhaps this will make things percolate even deeper into your being. For you are indeed an intrinsic part of it all, but the construction of everything is still a mystery to you and to everyone else sharing this little planet with you. You are just a speck of dust in so many ways, but this small speck of dust is also a very complex structure, connected and separated in so many different ways and different levels. For what you see as humanity, we see as just one separate layer of a huge mass of something far more complex than even the complex structure of the human body. That in itself is indeed a construction worthy several volumes of dissemination, but let us let that rest for now. For what we are wanting to delve into, is the complexity, or rather simplicity, behind the scenes, as they are even more fantastic than the tangible results you see, feel and hear on your side of the veil. As we have already talked about, everything is indeed energy, energy in different tones or forms of vibration, a shimmering haze of light that seems solid one moment, and invisible the next. But it is indeed the same thing all over, but it has been programmed to behave and be perceived in certain ways. Remember, the object does not exist unless there is an observer. That is the fundamental rule here. Like in the famous cat tale that is still a staple for all of your trained scientists, Schrödinger's cat. Is the cat dead or alive, or indeed both? No one knows, because you have to be able to observe it in order to decide the fate of the cat. So too it is with everything, and your scientists have started to literally see this for themselves too. True, they are merely scratching into the surface, for they look at the separate particles, and they have already discovered that famous entangled particles scenario. Big news indeed, but one that gets lost in all of the hubbub of everyday news. For what does this entail? It means that everything is indeed entangled, and we are not only talking about separate, or rather pairs of particles that are entangled thus. No, we speak of all of creation. For everything that is around you is behaving in the same manner as this duo of entangled particles. In other words, every time one part is observed, it starts to be, and it automatically makes everything else fall into step with it. In other words, this creation is flickering and shimmering and evolving and adapting every time someone consciously sees what is going on. And so it is like switching on the switch, enabling a whole set of reality to start to play out. In other words, this is quantum physics, or rather, quantum reality, all over again. For you live in a quantum soup of energy, and all that you see is part of the same soup. In itself, it all has the same origin, or rather, all the components are identical from the outset, like pieces of building blocks, all composed of the same material. But as soon as consciousness enters the picture, it literally creates a whole new picture. In other words, nothing truly exists at all, it is just energy in the form of particles, like a haze of shimmering light, ready to coalesce into shapes and forms, into beings and planets, into inert objects as well as more vital ones. Just remember, when we say inert, they are no more nor no less animated than anything else. Because a rock does not move around, it is no less alive than a human being, for you are all the same. We know this will be hard to truly digest, but you are indeed beginning to get the gist of it. For what separates you from us, from a planet, from God, from the heavens above or the deep waters below? Just one thing, and that is simply the eye of the observer, or rather the consciousness that you are but a single part of. For God is creative energy, but it is also consciousness, for without the one, the other would not be. Pure energy is nothing more than energy, it needs consciousness to be created. For creation and creating are two sides of the same coin, but they are indeed opposites, and as such, this duality is the origin of all. Someone needs to see or rather observe for creation to be, and that is the whole basis for creation. The two faces of God, if you will, energy and creativity, mind making matter from its other part, the energy. And this is what we want to impart to you. You are, because your consciousness have made you thus, and your consciousness is only a small part of the one, the basis, the grounding of it all. For you are merely a speck on a huge tapestry of creativity, all things that have been made to be because God made them. You are consciousness, but you are consciousness made visible because it made you from the ethers of energy, those hovering particles ready and waiting to be made anew time and time again. For this is like a tabula rasa, a sea of ifs wanting to become, by being looked upon, by being observed, by being thought into being, by being created by a force of vitality, a consciousness, that silent observer that observes it all. You are a part of this, but only a small part, so what you make, is merely a small drop in the ocean. But you are also God, so does that make you all-powerful? In other words, can you change the world? The answer is of course yes, but it is also no. It is yes, for you can recreate yourself. And through that, you are recreating your world. But you cannot recreate all of creation. Or rather, you cannot switch everything off and start anew, for that is not in your powers alone. For this is also a huge lesson in co-creating, in separation in order to make a whole out of separate units. Just one being can do as he pleases, he or she, or let us just use the word God in order to lessen confusion. So if you are God, you are the one, the creator, the single observer that sets everything into motion. But that is merely the first step. The next step is this: make separation, so that each single particle needs to work in tandem with everyone else in order to create. In other words, creativity needs to be as diverse as possible, and this diversity can only come from separation, or duality, or multiplicity. The list of words are endless, but the fundamental truth is this: to ensure the largest possible number of variations, separation needs to be established first. Then and only then will the optimal conditions for creating become valid. You need as many different factors, or fractions, as possible in order to get a whole spectrum of different possibilities, and that was the first task of Creator. And so, separation was set into motion, the Big Bang if you will, and everything started from there. Let us add another interesting layer to this: when you humans talk of the Big Bang, you refer to the origin of your universe, but when we talk of the Big Bang, we talk of the origin of everything. In other words, the first Big Bang, the one that preceded it all. For we are talking about the origin of everything, not just that primordial soup that was the inception of what later developed into your universe and your reality. No, we are referring to all of creation. And as such, it all started the same way, as one single pinprick of energy, of light, that consciousness set into motion by observing it and by setting up parameters for it to become something. It was like setting alight a match in order to see it in the dark, for before it was ignited by consciousness, it was not visible. It was, but it was not observed, and as such, it was not. But it became all as soon as consciousness entered and started to observe, and by observing started to create, and as such, the mind began matter from energy. But remember, matter is a mere figment of imagination, it is merely energy coalescing into something that can be observed. So again we say, let your mind set you free, for your mind is only holding you back by trying to see what it cannot see. Or rather, it is holding you back because it wants to see what it already can see, and so it overlooks everything else. But it is there already, ready to be observed by you, just like it is observed by God. So open your eyes and let your mind take a break, and try to connect with that part of God that is the real you, and then, and only then, will everything come into being before you. The Constant Companions. Channeled by Asia North. asianorth.wordpress.com